They said to me, if I didn't learn to be nicer, then I would end up on my own and nobody would love me.
Carolyn Hobsey, former HR board director, author of books with twat in the title, and someone whose life exploded in 2018. Now, as a self-professed reformed twat, what does being a twat look like in leadership, in the daily, that kind of goes unnoticed?
I always think that our inner twat is the one that talks to us in our head. We all have that voice, don't we? But our brains are wired to the negative as human beings. And so that inner voice, that inner twat in leadership is the one that says you shouldn't be here. It's the one that says you're going to fail. That's the inner twat, and that's what shows up in leadership.
Did you ever have that inner twat?
Oh, all the time. I think I've had that inner twat in all sorts of parts of my life. But in corporate life, yes, when you sort of, I came from a very sort of ordinary working class background. My parents weren't in the corporate world. My dad was an electrician, my mum was a hairdresser. But I then took this path that took me to the board tables in one of them was the world's second largest employer at the time. And you sit there and think, I'm just an ordinary working class girl. Should I be here? So yeah, definitely had that twat inside.
So many people, I think, experience that exact same thing. And so many people here at Mill Street most often have that imposter syndrome and the doubt, should I be here? How do you first of all recognise it and then combat it?
The most important thing I always say is that you have to observe. So you have to become the biggest observer of yourself. So you have to observe, where is that voice? When is it showing up and what is it saying? So you first have to notice that voice is there at all. Then you have to notice, what is that voice saying to me? And then you can start to unpick, to combat it. Where is that coming from? So what's the root cause of those words that it's telling me? Really, pretty much all of our beliefs about the world, but particularly about ourselves, are formed by the time we're about 7 years old. So you have to go back to, where did that happen? Was it something that a parent said? Was it a teacher at school? Whatever the voice is, there'll be a root cause for it somewhere that then starts to translate into your adult life of, I'm not good enough in some way. I was about 7 years old, and I was with a significant adult in my life. But they said to me, if I didn't learn to be nicer, then I would end up on my own and nobody would love me. And that's where mine came from.
Looking back, that was a while ago, but where you are now, what does that feel like, just to say out loud?
I feel sorry for that little girl. I feel sorry for the fact that, she took that on board and believed it. Just notice how those patterns then started to repeat, because I spent my time trying to be nice. I was a people pleaser. I tried to stop people from leaving. And so therefore I put up with lots of behaviours, both at home and at work, where it was really just about trying to get people to love me and stay.
So what was the moment that made you think, I can't be nice anymore?
When my world imploded in 2018, I lost my job because I had a boss who was a bully and I stood up to him. And at the same time, my partner who I was with at the time, we were selling our house and looking for another house. And he just walked into the bedroom one morning and said, when the house is sold, this is over. We're over. You'll never see the children again. That's it, it's done. So in the space of 10 days, I lost my job, my partner, my home, and my stepchildren, all in the space of 10 days. So my world just spectacularly imploded, and it became an unraveling and an unpicking of really a repeated pattern of behaviour around that made me realise that something had to be different.
Take me back to that moment when you're left standing in that empty house. What does it look like, and what's the first thing that you do?
It was literally like standing in sort of devastation, even though the walls were still standing. Really, the walls of my life were not still standing. And I think disbelief, I was frightened. He'd been abusive, so I was terrified from that point of view. Actually, the first thing I did was reach out to a friend. And I think that we never underestimate the power of our friends, because they're the family we choose, right? And actually, I think the first thing I had to do was ask for help, and that was really hard. You know, I had a fantastic high-flying job. I was the one that helped other people. I worked in HR. I helped other people. So asking for and accepting that help was kind of the first thing. Really just say it out loud. I think that's the thing. Just to say it out loud, to accept what had just happened to me.
In the lead up to 2018, how did your body react and give you those warning signs?
Constant stress, living on adrenaline all the time. And again, it was really easy from the home situation to justify it because work was stressful. I was ill a lot of the time, like low level ill, not like off at work kind of ill, but unwell a lot of the time, just feeling run down. Stress dreams. I used to have a lot of stress dreams. Where my body's like, again, processing stuff and trying to tell me stuff at night. So it was a mixture of things that just weren't quite right. I just felt exhausted a lot of the time.
You say that your boss was, or the best boss that you had was a man who cried at work. That's completely opposite to the stereotype of a strong leader, especially a male stereotype leader. Do you feel like this is changing, or do you feel like there are still aspects of masculinity which need to be presented in leadership?
I think there is so much that needs to change about leadership. There is so much that needs to change about our definition of masculinity in society. We're struggling to understand what masculinity is, and therefore I think it's time that we sort of redefined it. So in the past it has been, you know, protect and provide, and to be strong, have a mask, shut up. But I also don't think as a society that we can sit there and go, you know, shut up, say nothing, be strong. Oh, but by the way, also be vulnerable and speak up, and please, like, speak up if you've got issues with your mental health. And we are so hypocritical about that. I think about we tell men that they need to speak up and be vulnerable, particularly when it comes to their mental health. But then we provide no space for that. We don't provide them with any of the tools about how they do that. So I think the whole thing around leadership needs to shift. We need to redefine what it is. I think we need to unpick this kind of, it's a bit of a bastard blueprint is what I refer to it as, that leaders need to be a bit of a bastard in order to A, become a leader in the first place, and B, be respected and stay as a leader. And I think that's absolutely not what's needed, and definitely not what's needed to lead the generations coming through, because they don't want that. They don't respond well to that. They're also clinging onto their roles because I think men a lot at the moment are being told that they are irrelevant now and negative. But at the same time, they sort of know that they're leading this new generation who want something very different, and they don't know what to do with that. And that's kind of the space that I'm now operating in. That's like, let me help you kind of bridge that divide.
It's interesting what you say about having curious conversations, because I feel like in this current climate, there's almost a direct war between masculinity and femininity. I
think always come at things with good intent, and always assume good intent. If there is anger, let's try and understand where it comes from. Anger usually comes from a place of fear. Women that go around doing the whole let's smash the patriarchy just make me want to curl up in the corner and just go, no. I do not want to be associated with that at all, because I think it's so unhelpful. It pits men against women. It puts men into a place of defensiveness, and the cause of women will never ever improve if we've got men feeling like they have to fight and defend themselves. Let's start bridging that divide by, like I say, the curious conversations. I think ask questions and like understand why. I mean, ultimately, it is our right to disengage. You know, if somebody absolutely doesn't want to be reasonable, then hey, then they're never going to be your tribe, okay? Really, my plea, my advice, so whichever way you want to take it, is just be determined to be like good people. You know, let's turn up and be good humans. But I think if enough good men do enough good stuff, in the same way that if enough good women do enough good stuff, then good will come of it, right? Speaking of having these conversations, what's the first conversation or the things that mothers and fathers should say to their sons about this? I think the most important thing for me is about, like, you do have value. I think that's the thing. I think that's possibly what I think that young men start to doubt. Really? That they have, do I have value? Because society's sort of telling them they kind of don't. They're just a problem. They're, like you say, you're a burden. So I think talking about their value, but also I think talk about their values. When you're maybe just no longer in a room at any particular point, what is it that you want people to say about you when you're no longer in that space? And then from there, you can go, so how would you need to behave in order to get that legacy? Because then you start to relate it directly to action. And I think even with a young man, you can go, when you've been around to your mate's house, what do you want your mates to say about you? What do you want your mates' parents to have thought of you after that? What do you want your teachers ultimately to have thought of you? Anybody that they see as somebody important. What as parents, as mum and dad, what would you like people to be saying to us about you? Okay, let's start with that. And if those are the things you want people to say, how do you think you might go about getting people to say that stuff about you? How would you need to behave? What are the things you'd have to do?
Carolyn, we have a closing tradition on this podcast.
Okay.
Which is where the guest, regardless of who they are, answers this one question. And that is, what is one message that you've never sent, but you wish everyone would receive?
I always say that when we say that something's complicated, what we really mean is it involves emotions that I find uncomfortable, because I don't actually think anything is complicated. It normally is just very simple, but it has tricky emotions that we don't want to deal with. So that's probably maybe my key message is nothing is complicated. It just involves difficult emotions. Unpack the difficult emotions and suddenly it's very simple.
A philosophy for life. Carolyn, thank you so much for your time. I think your message is so profound and it's exactly what men need to be listening to, and also everyone else, so that they don't become a twat ultimately. So thank you for your time.
Thank you too.